good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. A very warm welcome to Silver Tent TV. The Silver Tent is a global platform for women over 50. It's a place where women can come to be supported, nurtured and encouraged. And it's also a platform for sharing women's wisdom. And by the very fact we've been around the block five decades and more, 6, 7, 8, 9. And with that in mind, I'm delighted to welcome Tamara Alferoff. A very warm welcome to you, Tamara.
Thank you, Siobhan. Nice to be here.
So Tamara has an amazing story and decades of wisdom. She qualified as a therapist 35 years ago. She was an active adult educator. She was involved in the whole co-counselling movement in the 60s and 70s. Fascinatingly, she was part of the Alternative London movement that began to emerge in the 60s. And she is one of the very few certified facilitators of Byron Katie's The Work here in the UK. It's a fascinating CV, Tamara, and I thought it'd be great to start with, tell us a bit about your story and what's led you to this point.
I was raised in the wild of the English Lake District by my parents, who left the mainstream, set up a small holding in the middle of nowhere in a ramshackle big old house, and we had ducks and geese and guinea fowl and goats and ponies and that sort of thing. So I grew up really knee-high to a grasshopper, and they were of Quaker orientation, really, not very religious, but very alternative. And my mum ran a vegetarian guest house when that was a very rare thing. And I'm, thrilled to bits to see how that alternative lifestyle has actually caught the imagination, fired a lot of people up to think carefully about how we live. So that's one of the things that's really important to me.
And I think also in the times of COVID, thousands more has really started to awaken. I didn't know that part of your story. So you really have been groundbreaking since you came out of the womb.
Yes, yeah, you could say that. I was always a rebel, actually. Growing up in the rural Westmoreland, which it was then, now part of Cumbria, I was raised with the then King's English, so I spoke, radio English, if you like, and that set aside. Then having a funny name, which was Alferoff, was also a bit odd. So we were always kind of, and I think rather than suffer from that, I made a virtue out of being an outsider. Yeah.
So what brought you to London then?
I fled a lover, actually. I was in Edinburgh University I loved it in the 60s. Yeah, I left the university in 61. And I had a lover there who became very possessive and actually bought a gun to defend me from would-be suitors. And so I fled. I took the little car and fled. And drove to London, where I had contacts in the publishing world. So I started working as an editor, and my degree was in languages and literature. So I translated many books from French then. So interesting life that was. Then I was introduced to my soon-to-be husband, who was an Israeli sculptor. So that led to a whole other lifestyle, which is still reverberating in my life, 50 something years later.
I suppose that's one of there was that whole movement, wasn't there, in the 60s, and very much artists being part of that as well, looking for alternative lifestyles and alternative ways of being.
Well, alternative, you could say. We had a one room, wasn't a flat, it was a one room with a sort of kitchen room with a butler sink and a cooker and a fridge, I think, and that was it. that was my kitchen, and I had my first child in that place. We then got married when I was pregnant with my second child. I was never wanted to be married, but I, so breaking convention all along, all my life, really. So 2 children, we moved to Belsize Park, and that part of London was full of interest. There were artists and architects, and soon the neighbours it was the time when South Africans were fleeing South Africa because of the apartheid, and a lot of South African friends, and that there were things happening then which was so fascinating, which have become completely mainstream now, like acupressure, which is now properly called shiatsu, and bakwa, which was circle walking, which has not become mainstream, and yoga and meditation and massage and all-night drumming sessions, and all of this magical stuff was just in its infancy then, and it was really groundbreaking.
And you were, of course, got involved in the adult education movement, teaching batik, and then getting involved in co-counselling, which was very radical at the time, co-counselling, because it took away that hierarchy of therapist and client, didn't it? And it was much more about mutuality and peer support and peer engagement.
Absolutely. Co-counselling was just a life changer for me. Peer-based, you learn a basic skill, and much like the work of Byron and Katie, actually, where the hierarchy barely exists. So you learn the basic skills, and you all learn those skills together on a training, and subsequently you practice those skills, and it's an incredibly liberating movement, actually, the co-counselling movement. I think you know something about it yourself. There's encouragement to cathartic your feelings, to the stage of inquiry would be a process of catharsis, if catharsis wanted to happen. And we were raised, from sort of Victorian values still in the 1940s and 50s. And, to be able to scream and yell and hit cushions and strangle towels and, scream at somebody who was role playing somebody you might be angry with, or just taking on that persona, that was so liberating. And of course, the somatic, holding things in the body as well, the somatic tensions and traumas and so on, to be released in that way. And peer-based and very, very loving. I found co-counselling just extraordinarily accepting of everybody, however different or peculiar or angry or upset they were. We were all peers, and that was just gorgeous. And that led on to my training as a psychotherapist.
And you mentioned Byron, Katie there, and the work. So yeah, from becoming a qualified psychotherapist, you then came across Byron, Katie in the work. What drew you to that?
Well, I was a senior staff member in the main college for psychotherapy, Transpersonal Psychotherapy in West London, Little Venice, and that put me in touch with all sorts of interesting people, of course. And I was one of initially 12 students. That was it. I was in the initial training, and the very beginning of that college, which has now had hundreds, thousands of ex-students all practicing. But at that time, one of my friends and colleagues was Robin Shoet, who wrote books on forgiveness and so on, and a dream manual. And we became good friends, and we used to hang out together quite often. And he was living in Findhorn at the time, and partly in Findhorn, partly in London. Of course, Findhorn's a whole other. That was just in the early years as well, Findhorn. But and so Robin disappeared one winter, and he came back, and I'd never seen him quite so doolally. And he showed up in my flat, and he said, "Oh, I'm in love. This is amazing. This is wonderful. And she's fantastic, and it's all beautiful." I thought, "Oh, what's happened to Robin?" That was in the year 2000, and he handed me a little book. I got a sort of a modern version of the little book. But it was a little blue and white book, and that's the cover. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, I can.
It was the early version of this, not quite so shiny, but the same print inside. And this is basically all you need is to do the work, which sets you free, as they say. And he handed me the little book, and I looked at it and I thought, yeah, another pretty blonde Californian. Yeah. And it sat on my kitchen table for 2 years without me looking at it, really. I was a bit skeptical.
So what took you to that moment where you picked it up?
I was normally, my supervision duties at CCP would require me to be out 2 evenings a week, about Tuesday and Thursdays, to supervise the students and in their about their work. And the term came to an end. It was July, end of term. I was free on a Thursday evening. I had a babysitter, I think, and I was able to go out. So I thought, well, I'll go out and I'll see what's on down at St. James's in Piccadilly.
Yes.
Alternatives.
I know. What a beautiful resource that is, and has been for so long.
Yes, I was at the beginning of that as well. We had a caravan where we practiced our counselling skills on passers-by, basically, whoever dropped in. But so I thought I'd have a look, because Donald Reeves was the vicar at the time, and he was a marvelous man, and he had all these alternative stuff, and he was the one who initiated basically the wonderful things that took place at alternatives back then. So I thought, I'll see what's on. I wonder what's on. And I saw the name Byron Katie in the little list that I'd got. I thought, oh, that woman's talking. I better go and find out what Robin was had gone so doolally about. So I went down there, and it was free. They were collecting donations. So I went there. It was an evening, just an evening, an hour and a half. And there were about, I don't know, maybe 60 people in the church there, listening to Katie do her thing. And I was rather impressed. And I thought, that was a Thursday night. And I saw there was a notice handed to me that she was doing a free drop-in weekend. Those were the days, mind you, free. Free drop-in 2-day event in London. So I went along on the Saturday. And I think there were, another 60 people, perhaps, possibly. For Katie, that's a tiny audience, when anyway, it grew and grew. So anyway, then I was, I found myself completely swept away by how the work works. And I went home and I started giving my credit card details to somebody in California, and I'd signed up to go to the school 2 weeks later. Now, the school for the work then was a very challenging experience. It was 9 days intensive, in the same place with the same group of people, residential. Everything was taken care of, and you just did the work basically from morning to night. And that was 8 in the morning till 10 at night. And that was a fantastic experience. So challenging to everything you think you know about, and you're convinced that you're right. Well, wake up. It's a wake up. And so that started me off on, I then did the training. I went to more schools as staff member, and
20 years later, here you are.
20 years later. Yeah. That's right.
And so just kind of bringing us up to present day. So from that incredibly rich tapestry of experience and lived experience that you've had, today you're providing online therapy, one-to-ones, and you also run a Dreamwork group. And thirdly, you run retreats. Can we just, sort of finish up there? Tell us a little bit about those retreats and your Dreamwork group.
Okay. Yes, I will. There's a lot of other stuff that I could talk about as well, which is the process work, Arnold Mendel's process work, and that is also to do with dreaming while awake, basically. But I also do conflict clarification. I work with big groups. I teach group dynamics. I run challenging workshops. And so that, that's a whole other thing.
I think that would be a fascinating part two to our
Part two, I
conversation.
think.
Wouldn't
Yeah,
it? I'd love to explore that whole thing of group dynamics with you. And I'm aware you're trying to get a retreat, and I use the word trying because we just don't know how things are going to unfold with COVID and everything. But there's you're aiming for a retreat at the end of August.
I've got for 12 years now, I've been running a retreat in Greece every summer, and for 40 years I've been running a retreat in the south of France, in the Pyrenees, every summer. And a couple of years ago I ran a retreat in Italy. Now those are three beautiful places in the mountains, in nature, absolutely fantastic. Each one is unique and very different. Sadly, the retreat place in Greece is now closed down. So I've decided to do an impromptu mobile retreat with renting a house, and people will come over a period of 2 weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks, and work with me. And we're going to look at the Heroine's Journey. I've got a whole lovely thing that I do, which is progress, working with archetypes, the Heroine's Journey. And that's what I'm going to be doing in Greece at the very end of August, actually probably the 1st of September, 2nd of September, for about a week, intensive workshop with a run-up, exploring that amazing area of Greece and just enjoying the food, the conviviality of the Greeks, the beauty of the mountain and the forest there, and the cascades of fresh water that come down the mountain, the springs, the trees. And of course the Aegean, the beautiful, beautiful Aegean. The neighborhood's so friendly. The villagers are so friendly. And I've got friends who live there and who will assist us in moving around and exploring the beautiful places.
I'm salivating already.
Well, somebody's coming from America, and she's bringing her daughter to do this Heroine's Journey with me. So it is actually. It doesn't require that you be a mother, but every woman is a daughter, and so it's very much based on the theme of Persephone and Demeter. Plus, I add in also Mary Magdalene, because they're three feminine archetypes, all of them who were dismissed, who were downgraded, who have been diminished over the millennia by the patriarchal system, and who are now coming, as we know, coming to the fore, coming into their fullness and their sacred energy, if you like. And so that's what the theme is. It's also incredibly relevant. I'm quite an activist in terms of the planet, and it's also incredibly relevant to what has happened to Mother Earth, and the destruction and pollution and the poisoning of our planet, and the recovery, the regeneration coming out of that dark place back into the light. And this is a story of Persephone and her mother Demeter. And Demeter, of course, is the goddess of the earth, the harvest, seeds and harvest and fruit. And so it feels so timely, this theme. On a personal level, people are separated from their families now. The elderly have been locked away, and lots of things have been happening that are so connected with this theme. So it's something I've been doing for a number of years now, and it's becoming more and more relevant, I think.
I think so, and I think also, lockdown has brought a lot of relationships to life, and has also forced women to confront the dissatisfaction of relationships as well. And so it seems like a very timely process to go through, plus in the beautiful Aegean Sea. And yeah, you described it so wonderfully. So, and there's also your dream group, which is available. You run that weekly.
I've been doing that now for 3 years, I think. And it's been an open group, and some people have been attending pretty much every week for the last 3 years, and that's been fantastic. That's been on a Monday morning, first thing. But now it's becoming apparent that there's room for an ongoing, like a 10-week course, I think, 8-week to 10-week course in dream work, and how to interpret your own dreams, how to facilitate your dreams, how to talk with other people about their dreams. But what I don't do is interpret dreams.
Right.
I don't do interpretation.
Right.
You know, there's a way to work with dreams which doesn't impose anything on anyone.
And of course, you know, insight is to be led by the person themselves.
Yeah.
And I understand that empowerment.
Yeah.
Tamara, so we'll put your website in the text, and so for people that want to follow up and follow through, and particularly to look more at the retreat. And are they able to contact you through Facebook as well?
Yes, Facebook. I have to say that my website has been a bit modern. What's the word?
Dormant.
Morbid. Dormant, yeah. For the last year, I suppose. I haven't paid much attention to it at all.
But it's definitely the way to contact you.
Yes, you can sign up by my website. I will start sending out a newsletter very shortly and putting these plans into action and putting a program in place. But the Greek retreat, you know, if you're interested in that, and you're a wild woman like myself and you're determined to travel come what may, then, you know, please get in touch about that.
Wonderful.
If nobody's allowed to travel, I'm going to do the same thing in the UK. So much more accessible.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I also do an online version, which is, you know, some of these things work very, very well online, and it can work very well online too. So, but
yes,
you know, being in nature is just something else.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I'm loving the creativity of how you can create deep and meaningful connection online, in the online space as well.
Yeah.
Tamara, it's been fascinating talking to you. What an incredible heritage, and what an incredible legacy that you have as well, in your passion and your commitment to the alternative. And I'm deeply grateful you made the time to come and be with us today.
It's been lovely talking with you, Siobhan. And, you know, even though we've never actually met in person, I feel, you know, deep friendship with you as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And from me, deep bow and deep respect as well. Wherever you are in the world, if the sun isn't shining in your skies, may it shine in your heart. This is Siobhan signing out for Silver Tent TV.